So welcome to lecture number 30, ME210 Fluid Mechanics. We will continue our discussion on boundary layer equations, and in this lecture today we will talk particularly about the development of the equations of boundary layers. So these are the equations, the equation in a differential form, and then we will also learn how to solve them for a particular laminar flow situation on a flat plate. Okay. So in the previous lecture, let's do a quick recap. We talked about some introduction to boundary layers and the idea of calculating or estimating the wall shear stress. That is the most important task in this discussion on external flows. And then we talked about the integral analysis or the momentum integral method that was developed by von Karman, and that can be used to estimate the drag force given that the velocity profile is available. Okay, so we use the idea of control volume. So this was our boundary layer. So we used a control volume which looked something like this. And in this control volume, we applied the idea of momentum. We'll apply the Reynolds transport theorem for the momentum as the extensive property. In today's lecture, the main aim or the main aims of today's lecture. So one aim is to understand the idea of order of magnitude analysis. That is a very important idea, and that helps us develop the boundary layer equations. So then we'll talk about the boundary layer equations, which are ultimately going to be solved. So these boundary layer equations are some special form of the Navier-Stokes equations. Okay, so by applying the idea of order of magnitude analysis, we'll be able to get these boundary layer equations. And then finally, once we have got the equations, we will solve them for a laminar flow situation in a flat plate or on a flat plate. Okay, so these are the three major tasks for today. So let's start. So the equations we'll be considering are going to be for a 2D situation. Okay, this is for simplicity. So it will be incompressible flow. We will neglect gravity and the flow will be steady. So these are the major assumptions for today's lecture. So all the discussion we'll have today will have a 2D flow, incompressible flow, no gravity and no transient terms. So there is no del by del t, nothing changes with time, everything is for a steady state situation. Okay, the boundary layer, let me draw a figure again just for showing the coordinates again. This is the boundary layer that we'll have. So the thickness of the boundary layer will be denoted by delta. As earlier, the x coordinate will be along the length of the boundary layer and the y coordinate will be perpendicular to the boundary layer. The incoming flow is uniform and we'll use a capital U for denoting the incoming flow. In fact, let us make it u infinity. That makes our life easier because sometimes there's a confusion between writing a capital U and a small u, just for clarity. And then the length of the plate that we'll be considering is going to be L. In some case, the initial discussion will not be specific to a flat plate. So instead of a flat plate, we can have some sort of a curved geometry as well. So let's say it's a cylinder across which the flow is happening. So, in this case the incoming flow again is u infinity, and since the flow is going to on the upper side, for example, it's going to do something like this. So, we will take the x coordinate as the arc length like this, and the y coordinate in such kind of a curved geometry becomes the normal coordinate. So, you can draw normal like this. So, depending on where you are talking about, it will be the normal coordinate. Okay, so, the y is always normal to the surface. So, it could be any one of these two geometries. The analysis will be the same, except for the later part of the discussion where we will solve the equations, particularly for the flat plate situation. Okay. The other assumption that we will be making now, in this case, in the curved case, the L will then the length will then become the total flow path length. So, in this case, well, L becomes this flow length. Right. The other assumption that we will be making is of thin boundary layers, that is delta by L is much less than 1. The other day we said that delta by L has to be less than 0.1. So, let us keep it quite small. So, then the thin boundary layer approximation is valid. Right. So, let us write the equations, the Navier-Stokes equations that typically will be solved, will be simplified in this situation, but let us write the equation. And remember, we are trying to solve for the equations inside the boundary layer. Okay. As I said in the previous, as the aim, we want to solve for boundary layer equations or develop the boundary layer equations. So, that means the equations of fluid mechanics which are valid inside the boundary layer. This discussion is, this chapter number 7 is all about what is happening inside the boundary layers. Okay, so, this is the region of interest. Not this one. So, let us write the continuity equation. So, this is a differential flow analysis. So, we will have the equations in the differential form, that is derivatives. So, the first one is continuity equation, del u by del x plus del v by del y is 0. Okay, so, this equation is valid inside the boundary layer from the idea of conservation of mass. Then we have the x momentum equation. So, that is remember, it is a steady state situation. So, we are not taking the del u by del t term. So, we have the convective terms. So, u del by del x of u plus v del by del y of u, and then we have the pressure gradient term in the x direction, and then we have the viscous terms. So, that is the x momentum equation. Similarly, we can write the y momentum equation. So, these are the equations that we will be solving. Well, these are the starting equations, which are the most general form in the sense of they are the Navier-Stokes equations, but we will be simplifying them, and these simplified forms will then be called the boundary layer equations. And these equations, it's worth writing the what are we solving for. So the unknowns. So the unknowns are u, the field v, and the pressure field. All are functions of x and y. Well, to start with, that's the most general sense we can have in terms of the functions u, v, and p. Okay, what are the boundary conditions in this case? So if I think of the y boundary, so on the surface that is at y equal to 0, okay, so that's the surface of the plate. So this is y equal to 0. So on y equal to 0, we have both u and v are 0. So that's the no slip condition. And then theoretically we mentioned that as your y tends to infinity, the x velocity, that is u, it tends to the free stream velocity u infinity. Okay, that is the reason we take the boundary layer thickness as that point where the x velocity, that is small u, has become equal to 99% of u infinity. Okay, so this is the boundary in y. Now at the inlet, we have a known flow field, that is u equal to u infinity. At the inlet is this point, this edge. Okay, so this is what we have. I mean, boundary layer just starts from here anyways, and later we will see that we don't need any boundary condition for the outlet. Okay, for the outlet there is nothing that is required, as we will see from the mathematical, the equation will have a special mathematical form, and that will not require us to write any boundary condition for x at the outlet. So inlet is your x equal to 0. So let's now start with the next discussion topic. Well, the first major discussion topic for today, and that will be the order of magnitude analysis. Right. So before we start this discussion, I mean, let's understand what is the meaning of order of magnitude. So for example, if we say that our velocity is 100 meters per second, it's a very high velocity, but that's we talk about 100 meters per second, and then we say that some other velocity u2 is 1 meters per second. Okay, so u2 is 2 order of magnitudes less than u1. Okay, so that's the typical understanding of the meaning of order of magnitude in a given situation. Now if I say that my u3 is 3 meters per second, then again typically u2 and u3 are of the same order, except that u3 is again around 2 orders of magnitudes less than u1. Okay, so this is what we will typically mean in order of magnitude. There can be a constant associated, but typically the order is similar. Okay, so point 1 is of the same order as point 2, but point 1 the order is much larger than 0.0001, for example. So that's what we'll mean, and we'll be using this tilde to denote the order of magnitude. Okay, so please don't confuse when I say that the order of u1, if I say that the order of u2 is the same as order of u3, so that does not imply that u2 is equal to u3. What that typically would mean is that u2 is some constant times u3, and that constant is somewhere between say 1 and 5 or something like that. Okay. So we will not typically this order, this tilde will not mean they are equal, they are of the same order, right? let's clear this a bit. We can keep it. Okay, so let's start with certain assumptions or certain order of magnitude comparisons that we already are aware of in the boundary layer situation. So when we have a boundary layer, we know that in this distance of delta, our u velocity, for example, is going from 0 to u infinity in this distance delta. Let's call this delta at some x. Okay. So what that means is the gradients in the y direction are quite high. So if I talk about del u by del y, then that will be much higher in magnitude as compared to del u by del x. The change in u I see, if I go from, let's say, 1 to 2, is going to be much less as compared to the change I will see in going from a to b. Because from a to b I am going from 0 to all the way to u infinity, but from 1 to 2 I am the change will be much smaller. So in this order of magnitude analysis, it's always about the order of magnitude. We won't talk about anything in an absolute sense, but in a comparative sense in this case. Okay. Similarly, if I was to talk about the second order differential, that again in the y direction is going to be much larger as compared to the change in the x direction. Okay, and again I put a mod here because we're talking about the magnitude, we're not talking about the signs and all. The sign could be different. Okay, so these are so in typically you will see summarizing that the derivatives in the y direction so derivatives in the y direction are going to be much larger than the derivatives in the x direction. And the reason is because you have this boundary layer where the strong changes in the flow fields will happen. Well, in this case, we are seeing a strong change in u. We will also see that there will be strong changes in v as well, but that we will come to later. Okay, so let's start with our order of magnitude discussion. So let's start with the continuity equation. Del u by del x plus del v by del y is 0. Right. So what is the order of u? The order of u is u infinity. Okay. So typically, if I see the flow situation anywhere, then I will be seeing some order of u inside the boundary layer as typically of the order of u infinity. Okay, unless I am extremely close to the base, but otherwise it's typically of the order of u infinity. Then what is the order of del u by del x? Okay, so this order is u infinity upon L. Okay, so what we will say is that the changes in u are of order u infinity as we go from left to right. Imagine going from a point here all the way to here, then you may see that the u value is much higher at point number, let's call it 1, and at point number 2 the u value will be much smaller. So you are seeing that within that distance of L, that's the whole plate length, you have the change, the value of x velocity has changed a lot. It's the order of u infinity. So the changes in u are of the order of u infinity in the x direction along the length of the plate, and change in x is of of the order L. Okay, so that gives us del u by del x. The order of del u by del x is u infinity upon L. Okay, remember, del u by del x is the change in u with going in the x direction. So that's order. Right. So what is the order of then del v by del y? Let's use a different color for orders. Okay, so the order of del v by del x is going to be the change. So if you're talking about the boundary layer like this, then in the delta thickness, what is the change in v? So we don't know what the change in v is, so we'll call it delta v. You'll slowly see what where we are heading. So this is the order of del v by del y. Change in v is of order delta v, and change in y is of order delta. So that's going in the y direction in the boundary layer, right? But this equation, the continuity equation, it also tells us that del u by del x is equal to minus del v by del y. Or basically their magnitudes are equal. Okay, only then del u by del x plus del v by del y are going to be the sum will be going to be 0. Okay, so what that means is that the order of this term has to be the same. If they are equal, then of course their order has to be the same. Okay, and the order of del u by del x was u infinity upon L, and the order of del v by del y was delta v upon the boundary layer thickness delta. Okay, so this tells us that delta v is of the order, well, should we say, right? So we're talking about the orders here. So if something is of the order u infinity by L, and something else is of the order delta v by delta, but if they are equal, that does not mean the orders are exactly equal, because the orders always can have some constant factor being multiplied. So at best we should keep it as order. Okay, so that means delta v is of the order u infinity times delta upon L. Okay, so this we will require later, so that is the reason we have written this relation between the order of relation for the order of delta v. Now, but delta v was the change. Okay, so delta v was the change in v that we got in this delta thickness in the boundary layer, and we know that at the boundary at the base at the surface of the plate v is 0. So that means at the surface your v is of the order of delta v. So that means in this region v is of the order of delta v. We will want to use this. So okay, so if something goes from 0 to 10, then the order of the quantity in that region, in most of the region, is going to be of the order of 10. Okay, so v is of the order of u infinity delta by L. Right, so that has given us the order of v, because the order of v was not known. Order of u was known because the flow is happening with a uniform x velocity, so that was known, but the order of v was not known. And sometimes we make a mistake. We simply say that the order of v is 0. Well, that's not true, because we do have a y velocity, as we can see from here, that since del u by del x is non-zero, so del v by del y is also non-zero, and they are of the same order. So that means the v has some magnitude of a certain order. It may be less than the order of u, but that does not mean it's 0. So in order of magnitude analysis, we always use it for comparison between two quantities. Right, so that completes the discussion on continuity equation in terms of the order of magnitude analysis. So the continuity equation told us what the order of magnitude of the y velocity, that is v, is inside the boundary layer. So let's move on. Let's start on a new page. The x momentum equation. Okay, so let's write the equation again, and then I'll be writing the orders of their magnitude just below them. Right, so the fourth term is the viscosity term, which is del to u by del x2 and del to u by del y2. Now remember, we just told that the derivatives in the y direction are much larger in magnitude as compared to derivative in the x direction. So that means that this term I can neglect, because I just showed that the order of magnitude of this term is much less. I mean, we can also show using the order of magnitude analysis, but since we already know this, so we will let it go. And remember, neglect is in comparison to this term. Okay, you can't just neglect it in all cases. It depends on what it's added to. So if you add a 0.001 with a 0.1, then that's equal to approximately 0.1. But if you add 0.001 with 0.002, then you can't neglect any one of those, because they are all both of the same magnitude, order of magnitude. Let's write it clearly. Right, so let's write the order of their magnitudes just below them. So the first term is u del u by del x. So the order of u is u infinity, as we mentioned in the beginning. The order of del u by del x is u infinity upon L. The order of v, we just found out, let's check, was u infinity delta by L. And the order of del u by del y is going to be u infinity upon delta, because u changes in an order delta u infinity, and y changes by an order delta inside the boundary layer as you go from y equal to 0 to y equal to delta. The order of 1 by rho del p by del x is not known, because we don't have any information about pressure, so we will keep it. It could be large, it could be small, it doesn't matter, we'll keep it, and our intuition says it is not small, it is comparable, because del p by del x, the pressure gradient in the x direction, has an effect. I mean, that is what in many cases drives the flow. Okay, so this in a most general sense cannot be neglected. Now this mu by rho is equal to the kinematic viscosity. So this we do not know, so we'll simply keep it nu, the kinematic viscosity, and then you have del to u by del y2. So the order of that is u infinity upon delta square. Okay, well, for ease I can simply call it nu here. Okay, what's the need of writing mu by rho every time? Okay. Right, so let's compare the orders. Well, we can't, because the first two, they show us that this is u, simplifying further, this is u infinity square upon L, and this in the second term the delta cancels out, so that is u infinity square upon L. Okay, so they are the same order, so we can't neglect one of these two convective terms. Okay, they are both of the same order, but that's pretty much what is known till now. But there's something interesting that we can some interesting idea we can apply. So inside the boundary layer, okay, what we have is we have the viscous flow effects. We have been calling that viscous flow effects are, or this is the viscous flow regime, and the outside is the inviscid flow regime. So the idea of inviscid flow regime is that the viscous effects are negligible. Now negligible as compared to what? As compared to these inertial terms. Okay, because typically in a flow, what you have is you have the pressure gradient that can be the driving force, delta P causing a flow inside a pipe, for example. You have the viscous terms, which are the terms that lead to the dissipation, the viscosity effects, and then you have the inertial terms on the left hand side. Okay, so these are the terms which are pushing the flow further because of its inertia. We call them the inertial terms, the convective terms. So outside the boundary layer, it is this part that can be neglected, because the viscous effects are negligible as compared to the inertial terms or the inertial effects. Okay. But inside the boundary layer, we can't neglect it. So what that means is, by the nature of the idea of boundary layer, that the order of the inertial terms is the same as the order of the viscous terms. Okay, or we can say the order of inertial forces, which is again these terms, the convective terms, is the same as the order of the viscous forces. Okay, so that tells us something very interesting. So I'll just write it here. So inside boundary layer, okay, so we just saw that the order of inertial terms is u infinity, let's use the blue color again, square upon L. Okay, and the order of the viscous terms is nu u infinity upon delta square. So for these two orders to be equal, or well, let's use because we've been using tilde for the orders to be equal, that means our kinematic viscosity nu has to go as let's simplify this. Okay, so that is the order of kinematic viscosity nu. So that's very interesting. So we have found out the order of nu. Okay, so from that we will see u infinity squared by L is what the order of the viscous terms are. Well, that has to be the same, because that is the whole idea we used for equating the orders of the viscous and the inertial terms. Okay, but we have found something interesting here, so we will just box it and keep it. Let's see if this can tell us something else, because we have found out the relation between the orders of nu and delta. Let's see if we can simplify this a bit further. So let's write delta in terms of nu. So that becomes nu L upon u infinity as a square root. I take delta on the left hand side and everything else on the right hand side. And then I can also then say, if I divide both sides by L, this becomes nu by u infinity L. So L becomes an L square inside the square root, and one of the L cancels. And this nu by u infinity L is nothing but 1 by Reynolds number based on L. Right. So what have we found out from this idea of the order of magnitude analysis? We have shown that the boundary layer thickness delta divided by the length of the plate, it goes as 1 by square root Reynolds number based on the length, and that's interesting. It's very interesting. Well, just keep it interesting. And the reason is because we found this, we still haven't found how the delta, what exactly the delta value is, the boundary layer thickness is, because we said that it's important to find out what this boundary layer thickness is. But we have found out that it goes, or it increases as well, delta by L decreases as 1 by Reynolds number to the square root. And if you remember from the von Karman analysis, the delta by x using the von Karman analysis, well, I'll call it Vk, was approximately 5.0, well, I think it was 5.5 upon square root Reynolds number. Okay, so what that basically is saying that delta upon x is going as 1 upon Reynolds number x square root. Okay, and this is without even solving for those momentum equations and so on, without assuming any sort of profile, we simply have shown using a very basic idea of order of magnitude analysis that delta by L goes as 1 by square root Reynolds number. It's a very strong idea of the order of magnitude analysis. So one has to, this is an idea that we are learning here, applying to the development of boundary layer equations, but it can give us something more than that. It can tell us how certain quantities vary in terms of a comparison with other quantities. Right. Now, what is the order of P? Let's see. Well, del P by del X, sorry. So in this case, since this equation, this one had 4 terms, and term number 1, 2 and 4 all have the same order. So that means that term number 3 has to have the same order as the others. Okay, same from if something is equal to something, then both their orders have to be the same. Okay, so this tells us that the order of del P by del X, or I should say the order of 1 by rho del P by del X is the order of the other terms was u infinity square by L. Okay, so this is the order of del P by del X as well. And if I was to simplify or simplify a bit further, so I will say so del P by del X I can think of in terms of, so inside the boundary layer, if I am talking about 2 points, 1 and 2, so I am talking about the delta P x between points 1 and 2 upon the x distance between these two, and if they are separated by the full length of the plate, then this gets so I get this kind of a variation. So if I was to write this as this, so that will give me that the order of delta P x is u infinity square, the L cancels and we have a rho. Okay, so we will be requiring this soon. So we will just say that the order of the pressure change along the length of the plate is of the order of rho times u infinity squared. Right. So now let's move on to the y momentum equation. Okay. So let's write the y momentum equation. Right. So again, by the idea of the derivatives in y direction being much higher than the x direction, so this term can be neglected. Now let's write the orders of the other terms. So the order of in the first term, the order of u is u infinity, and the order of v or delta v is what we found out as u delta upon L, and the order of delta x is L, so this becomes times 1 by L. Okay, so that's for the first term. For the second term, again we have u delta by L for v, and then since we have del v by del y, so this gets squared, and then we have a 1 by delta coming from y. Okay, the pressure term again is unknown, so for now we'll keep it as unknown, and the order of nu we found out. The order of nu was u infinity delta squared upon L, and then so this is this nu, and the order of del 2v by del y squared. So del 2v is the change in some sense of a change in y, so this is u delta upon L, and then delta y squared in the denominator, so that's a 1 by delta squared. Okay, so this is what we have. Let's simplify these. Here some places I am writing u and some places I am writing u infinity. They should be the same. So the first one gives us u infinity squared delta upon L squared. Okay, the second one again gives us u infinity squared. One of the delta cancels, so 1 delta by L squared. So same order. So that means these two convective terms are of the same order in the y equation. The third term is unknown, so we leave it. And the final one is u infinity squared delta upon L squared. Okay, so they are all of the same order. Okay, so again by the same idea, then the order of this pressure term also has to be. So the order of 1 by rho del p by del y has to be equal to u infinity square delta upon L squared. All right. So let's simplify this a bit further. So this gives us the order of 1 by rho. I'll take the right hand side. So delta p in the y direction is u infinity squared delta upon L squared, and then we have a delta coming from this del y, so this becomes delta squared, and then we have a rho. Okay, so this I'll put a star here, and then let's go back to what the expression for order of delta p x was, putting a star there as well. So the order of delta px, that is the change in the pressure in the x direction, was rho u infinity squared, and the order of delta p in the y direction, that is in the boundary layer, along the boundary layer thickness delta, is that delta px, which is rho infinity square times delta by L to the squared. Okay, well this should be order of delta px, because it was the order of delta px that was rho u infinity squared. Okay, so what we are saying is that the order of delta Py is the order of delta Px times delta by L squared. And remember, this delta by L was much less than 1. So this implies the square of that, it's much less than 1. So what that means is my delta Py is much less than delta Px. So that's sending a message that inside this boundary layer, the delta Py that you see if you go from the base of the plate to the boundary layer thickness, that change is extremely small as compared to the pressure change that you will see if you go from here to here, let's say. Okay, so you can simply neglect the pressure change inside the boundary. Now pressure is a scalar, right? So the change in pressure you see if you go up is 10 to the minus 8, and if you go to the right is of the order of 1. So you can neglect this 10 to the minus 8 change, okay, as if it seems like there is no change in the pressure at all in the y direction if you talk about pressure changes in the x direction. Okay, and that's a very important idea. I briefly touched upon that upon that in the last lecture. I said that we can assume that the pressure changes in the y direction inside the boundary layer are negligible. So whatever pressure we see outside the boundary layer is what we can impose on the inside of the boundary layer as well. So what that means is you solve for pressure as a function of x in the region outside the boundary layer, and then you use that information for inside the boundary layer. And I call it P as a function of x because P does not change with y inside the boundary layer. Okay, so we just call it P as a pure function of x inside the boundary layer. All right, and that's a very important idea. So one must keep that in mind. So the changes. Let's summarize that. I'm sorry. Right. So we can use the pressure field from outside the boundary layer and apply it inside the boundary layer. So effectively we have removed the pressure as an unknown from our list of equations. Okay, we are not going to solve for pressure at all. We'll simply solve for the pressure for the outside boundary layer region, whatever be the method. In this chapter we are not interested in that. We'll solve for the potential flow equations, or we'll use the idea of Euler's equations, which are basically inviscid Navier-Stokes equations, which are basically going to give us the Bernoulli equation. So from there we can calculate the pressure function as a function of x, and then we can use that for inside the boundary layer as a known. Okay, so in our x momentum equation, our del p by del x times minus 1 by rho becomes a known function of x that is coming from the outside boundary layer information. So del P by del X inside boundary layer is equal to dP by dx from outside boundary layer, and this is some function of x. Okay, I keep writing dP by dx because I am assuming that the pressure variation in the y direction outside the boundary layer is not there. And that makes sense because the flow is only happening along the surface, it is not happening perpendicular to the surface outside the boundary layer. Okay, so finally our equations now become our boundary layer equations can now be summarized as the continuity equation that stays as it is, and the x momentum equation which still has the convective terms, but for the pressure term we get it from outside the boundary layer. Okay, so that means it is a known function, we won't solve for P, and then we have the only the y direction second order gradient for the viscosity term. So let us look at the x momentum equation, that is our second equation here from a mathematical point of view. So we can see that for u we only have the first order derivative in the x direction. Right. So in the x direction we need only one boundary condition. Okay, and in the y direction we will need two boundary conditions because we have a second order derivative. So we will have two constants of integration and we will have to find out those two constants using two boundary conditions in the y direction. And that was what I meant in the beginning, that in a boundary layer differential equation solution all you need is the inlet boundary, that is you need the value of u at x equal to 0, which is u infinity, but you do not require an outlet boundary condition because of this idea. Okay. There is also something very interesting here in this x momentum equation is that mathematically this equation is of the parabolic type. Okay, we have not discussed in this course, but you may have studied that in your engineering mathematics course, that partial differential equations are categorized into three types, the elliptic type, the parabolic type and the hyperbolic type. Okay, of course there is no mathematical relation with the actual conic sections except that the constants, the characteristic equation that we have is of the same form as the conic sections form, the b square minus 4ac. So that is what we use similar words. Other than that you do not see a parabola or ellipse or a hyperbola as geometrical shapes here. Okay, so this is a parabolic type, this equation is parabolic type partial differential equation. So what it means is, from the parabolic type, I mean another example of parabolic type of equations is parabolic type PD in x direction. You need a longer discussion here as to what these types are and so on, but what this means is that the x direction, the x coordinate, it behaves like a time coordinate. Okay, because typically if you remember our Navier-Stokes equation, they used to have del u by del t, they never had del 2 u by del t squared because this was not there. So we had this term plus some del 2 u, on the right hand side we used to have del 2 u by del x2 and we had a del 2 u by del y2 and on the left hand side we had del u by del x, we had del u by del y and so on. Okay, so in time we only had first derivative, and now what's happened is in our boundary layer simplified equations we only have first derivative in the x direction. In the y direction we have a second derivative as well. So this equation mathematically starts to behave as if x was a time-like coordinate, right? So what that means is, I mean, in time, if you think from the idea of causality, you get some solution and then you march further in time to find out the solution at a later time. You won't have a problem where we say that the solution at t equal to 0 and t equal to infinity is given and you have to find out, interpolate between those times. You start with some initial condition t equal to 0 and then you further march in time. So that means since x is behaving like a time, so now we can march in x direction. Okay, so mathematically what we do is we find the solution at x equal to 0, that's given. So the u value at x equal to 0 is given, and then you start marching further and then you start calculating u at x equal to x1, u at x equal to let's say some further value, and then you calculate further. I mean, of course, we are using, I mean, this becomes more intuitive when we talk about computational or numerical methods to solve these kind of equations, but it's worth mentioning here because mathematically these equations are behaving in a different way as compared to our full Navier-Stokes equations, which were both elliptic in x and y directions. So here in this boundary layer form of the x momentum equation, only the y direction is elliptic. Solution seems to spread in all y directions. You can't start from y equal to 0 and then go further because the y equal to 0 and y equal to infinity information is given. You have to sort of the solution quickly spreads in all directions in y, in all values in y. But for x you can start from 1 and then you can move further to the right and this will proceed. So it's very interesting. I mean, there's a lot we can say about these kind of equations in terms of its behavior and what we see otherwise as well, but we will stop here in terms of its mathematical nature. Okay, so you march in x direction, but in y direction the solution is spread in the y direction. Right, it's there's nothing to worry about these ideas right now, but in case you deal with these equations in much more detail in a course, for example, advanced fluid mechanics, where you deal with viscous flow theory in much further detail. This course will be offered in the next semester. You can register for that if you want. So this, I mean, I'll be teaching that course as well. It's ME 603. So there, this discussion of the nature of these kind of equations is going to become much more prominent. So it's just a basic idea behind the mathematical nature of these equations, right? So what is the next step? So we have very nicely used the idea of the order of magnitude analysis, and we have now obtained our equations. Well, this is okay. So these are our equations of the boundary layer. So inside the boundary layer, all we have to solve is for these two equations, and this will help us find out the value of u and v fields. So we are going to solve this for u as a function of x and y and v as a function of x and y. There's no p here because, as we said, that we can simply find out the pressure field from the outside in viscid region and superpose that on the inside the boundary layer region. P only as a function of x because y variation in pressure is almost negligible inside the boundary layer thickness. Right, so let's see if we can actually solve this, and for learning for developing a solution methodology, we'll be using a flat plate situation. Okay, because flat plate is the simplest geometry that we can think of in terms of developing boundary layers. It's a straight x coordinate, no curvature. And the other reason is for this situation, there has been a very interesting development done in the past in the history of fluid mechanics. So it's worth mentioning those people and the work they have done. Okay, so this will be the solution of 2D, of course. We have been talking about 2 dimensions, boundary layer equations on a flat plate. Now what happens in a flat plate is that this dP by dx, it is 0. Okay, so in a flat plate, on the inviscid region, the pressure is constant. Right. So in this case, dP by dx becomes 0, and that makes our equations mathematically much more tractable. So we start with this kind of a situation. Now, of course, we can have situations where if the instead of a plate we have a curved geometry, let's say the front surface of a car, for example. In that case, because of the curvature, we will see that the pressure will start to vary, and if that happens, then dP by dx is not 0. We will consider those situations, not mathematically, but we will analyze them by looking at the nature or the behavior of the solution, but that will be in the lecture tomorrow. Right. Now, even if you have a curved geometry, which is where the curvature is not very large, you can consider that to be, you can approximate that curved geometry as a flat plate if there is nothing else available. So it's not a very bad assumption to use the flat plate solutions even for geometries which are slightly curved. Okay, and one of the other reasons we are discussing this flat plate solution is because of the idea of similarity which was given by Blasius in 1908. That was used that is used to deal with these kind of equations mathematically. Okay, it's a very neat mathematical idea. To solve the boundary layer equations. Okay, and other kind of equations as well. So we will discuss the ideas that Blasius used in his 1908 dissertation. Okay, so the idea is, the word similarity, what it means is that we say that inside the boundary layer, we will say that the ratio of u to u infinity is a function of y to delta. All right. So what it means is, let's look at this figure. So if I am talking about 2 different x distances, and I take the center point of both. So in case of the first one, in the first case, in the first section, or at x1 value, at the center point, which is this one, or u by u infinity. So u at let's call it 1. Okay, so this is u1 upon u infinity is a function of y upon delta. Okay, so the y I have chosen is in such a way that it is halfway through. So this becomes, it's a function of y by delta, where y is half. So this is let's call this half. Now at the section 2, where I am calling this as u2, this was u1. So u2 upon u infinity. Now since it's a function of y upon delta, now the delta has changed. Okay, delta has increased as we have moved from 1 to 2, but I am also choosing a center point here. So that means this is again half. So what this tells me is that my u1 and u2 values will be equal. Okay, so this is the idea of similarity. Okay. So the system is similar as you go from left to right inside the boundary layer in terms of this kind of an idea. Now, of course, this delta is the boundary layer thickness, but we can also have it as some multiple of delta. So, if I go back to a couple of minutes ago, or even the last lecture, we showed that delta upon x is going like, well, this was given, this was approximately from the von Karman analysis, this came out to be 5.5 upon square root of Reynolds number. Okay, let's go up and see. In fact, we discussed that today as well. Okay, yeah. So this delta upon x was 5.5 upon square root Reynolds number. Okay. So this so this implies that my delta goes as, or well, in this case is approximately equal to 5.5 is nu times x upon u infinity. Okay, so that's how my approximate delta value is as a function of x, and this 5.5 is a constant. So I can also say that my delta, sorry, the order of my delta is simply nu x upon u infinity. That 5.5 is just a constant. If I was to see how my delta varies as other values, it's approximately varying as the square root of nu x upon u infinity. Okay. So what we do is, instead of using a delta in this function phi, we use a delta tilde, and this delta tilde we will call as nu x upon u infinity, square root of that. Okay. So the idea of similarity is that this delta has to be the boundary layer thickness, but since we are talking about functional forms, okay, so if something is a function of 5.5 times x, then I can also modify that as a functional form, some other function as a function of x. Okay. So in our discussion we will be using delta tilde, and delta tilde is simply nu x upon u infinity square root, and the idea of similarity I have already discussed. Right. So this y upon delta tilde, okay, so this y upon delta will be written as eta. Okay, so I will make the substitution. So this will help me write u upon u infinity is simply a function of eta. Okay, instead of writing y by delta tilde again and again, it's simply it's much easier to use the variable eta. So given that now we understand the idea of similarity, let's start using it. Now, since we are talking about 2D flows, and of course they are incompressible as well, as we have discussed earlier, we can use the idea of stream function. Okay, so let's make use of that, because that's a very neat idea as well. I say we will use, but that is what Blasius used as well. The whole idea of using a stream function is that you don't have to then solve for the continuity, because continuity equation by the definition of stream function is satisfied. So we then will only be required to deal with one scalar function psi, which is a stream function. Okay, so let's define a stream function. Well, this is what Blasius defined as the square root of u infinity nu x times some function f of eta. Okay, because we don't know what the stream function is. Okay, that is what we are trying to solve for. We are trying to solve for u and v. So we define our psi in such a way so that it's some constant which is u infinity nu x square root times some unknown function f, which is a pure function of eta. It's completely allowed. We can do that, except that we don't know if this is going to satisfy or not. But let's see. Let's try to work it out. So if this was a psi that has been proposed, what is u? Okay, so u is del psi by del y, and if I put the values, okay, the f is only a function of eta, and I can use the chain rule here. So this becomes df upon d eta, and then I have a del eta by del y. Okay, because eta is a function. Now what is eta? Eta is y upon delta. I can also write so eta is y upon delta tilde, and delta tilde is this one. So this becomes y square root u infinity upon nu x. Okay, so that's my eta. Right, so this becomes square root u infinity nu x, and then we have df by d eta, which we can also use f prime as a function of eta, or f prime at eta, and then del eta by del y. Now eta is a function of x and y, as we can see from here. Let's write that eta is a function of x and y, which is given like this. So del f by del eta, del eta by del y simply becomes this. Now we can do some cancellation, and all we'll be left with is u infinity times f prime of eta. Okay. And we've got something very interesting here. So the idea of similarity was what I proposed, that is what the idea here is, which works as we have seen from experiments. But this proposal of psi that's given here was proposed, and this proposed psi function satisfies the idea of similarity. That is what we just have seen. What have we got? We've got u as u infinity times f prime eta. So what that means is, what you got is u upon u infinity is f prime eta. And that is what the idea of similarity was, that u upon u infinity is some function of eta here. So f prime is also a function of eta, a pure function of eta, so that phi is f prime. Right. So this choice of stream function is good. It works. I mean, it satisfies our idea of similarity. So let's write that. Right. So it satisfies the proposed similarity idea. So we are quite happy with this choice of psi. Now, given that we are here, let's also find out the expression for v, the y velocity, because we'll be requiring them, because we'll soon be plugging all these into the equation, the boundary layer equations. So what is v? V is minus del psi by del x. Okay, I won't go. I won't do all the algebra here. You can do it yourself, and then finally, what we get is half square root of nu u infinity by x, and then we have eta f prime minus f. Okay, I'm not writing the functional dependence on eta for f, that is implied. Right. Okay, so we've got both u and v. So what are we trying to do here? I mean, mathematically, if you think about it, what we are trying to do is we are trying to convert our partial differential equation, the system of partial differential equations, which is this green system, into an ordinary differential equation. Now we have already got rid of the first one because the first one is continuity equation, and by the idea of stream function, we don't need to write it anymore because our u and v are defined using the idea of from the idea of continuity being satisfied. So it's only the second equation, which is the x momentum equation, that we have to satisfy and that we have to solve for. So what we do here is we substitute the u and v expressions, and these are in terms of f. Well, it also has x here and so on. So in terms of f into the x momentum equation. In the boundary layer equation. So we are substituting that into the boundary layer equations, not in the general Navier-Stokes equation. And when we do that, I'll strongly ask you to please do it yourself. When we do it, we get a very nice ODE. Okay, that is beautiful because mathematically now we have an ordinary differential equation. It's much easier to solve this as compared to solving the partial differential equation that we had in both x and y. And this equation is also known as the Blasius equation. Okay, well, in the honor of Blasius, who developed this idea mathematically. And this is beautiful. I mean, if you think about it, your equation was in two variables x and y, and using this stream function psi that is given here, we and mathematically that is all. I mean, the idea of similarity, etc., we don't have to even know that. We simply have to smartly, I mean, that is what Blasius did. He smartly thought of an eta and he substituted this psi. Well, he obtained u and v from this psi, substituted that into the equation, and then he got a pure equation in eta. All the x and y dependence independently was gone. All we had was an eta. Okay, well, f as a function of eta. So all we have to do now is to solve for f as a function of eta, and our job is done. Okay, let's look at the boundary conditions. So we had earlier two boundary conditions in y and one boundary condition in x. Let us see if all of those can be converted to an f and eta form, because we are talking about f as a function of eta now. So one of these was at y equal to 0, we had u equal to 0 and v equal to 0. So what that translates to in terms of eta. So when let's go back to our eta expression, that is here. So when y is 0, eta becomes 0 as well. Okay. So that means at eta equal to 0, and when u is 0, let's go to this expression. So if u is 0, then f prime is 0. So that is what we get from u equal to 0, and this is the expression for v. So when v is 0, now f prime anyways has been made 0, so what that means is even f has to be 0 for v to be 0. Okay, remember that f equal to 0 is not the only thing that comes from v. F prime also has to be 0 for f to be 0 from v. Okay. All right. The other boundary condition we had physically was at y tending to infinity. So we said that at y tending to infinity, our u tends to the free stream velocity u infinity. Okay, so when y tends to infinity, from this expression for eta, eta also tends to infinity. Okay. So when eta tends to infinity, then u has to tend to u infinity. So that means from this expression we can see that f prime tends to 1, because u by u infinity is what f prime is. Okay, so we have translated both the y boundary conditions to eta boundary conditions. Is there anything else that we need here? So we have 3 boundary conditions now. So we have the value of f and f prime at eta equal to 0. So these are 2 boundary conditions for f. Well, one is for f and one is for f prime. And then so let's say we have 2 boundary conditions, and then the third one is this one. So in fact we have 3 boundary conditions. That is what we need for a third order ODE. But we still have one more boundary condition from our physical system. I should have yeah, and that is at x tending to 0, that is in the beginning of the plate, our u was u infinity. I use a tend because strictly x equal to 0 will be a problem. So at that, if you are tending towards x equal to 0, then your u is tending towards u infinity. Okay, what does that translate to in terms of our eta, f is a function of eta? So when x tends to 0, let's see from this expression for eta. So when x tends to 0, then eta tends to infinity from this, okay, for a fixed value of y. I'm keeping y as a constant here now. So at x tending to 0, that is the left edge of the plate, our eta tends to infinity. Okay, so this translates to eta tending to infinity, and u tending to u infinity means that f prime is tending to 1. Okay, and that is exactly what we had here. They are the same. Okay, if that was not the case, then we actually could not use this kind of a similarity idea mathematically. Okay, so this is a very strong check that if you are using an eta variable, I mean, if you are converting if you're converting a PD to an ODE, then you have to define an eta which is a function of x and y. So you have to define x and y in such a way, or eta in such a way as a function of x and y, that I mean, since you have a y in numerator and x in denominator, so when y tends to infinity, that is the same as x tending to 0. So they should both have the same boundary condition. So if for some reason hypothetically u was not tending to u infinity, but u was tending to some other value, then we cannot use this idea, because then these two will not be the same. But eta is still tending to infinity in both cases. Okay, so this won't be a well posed, or this substitution that we have made is not a good substitution. Okay, just be careful about these things. It's very important, right? So I'll just write same as above. Okay, so we have our 3 boundary conditions. So now we can solve this Blasius equation, right? So Blasius did that. I mean, Blasius did that in 1908 in his dissertation. But it's not possible. I mean, what Blasius obtained was he obtained a series solution, okay, an infinite series solution, and that series was written around eta equal to 0. So you have infinite number of terms. So to be able to actually get something so this infinite series had to be calculated. So this calculation was done, I mean, of course, using numerical ideas. And when we do that, because remember what we have solved for is f. Okay, so f is a function of eta. Is obtained as a table. Okay, so for different values of eta, we'll have the different values of the function f. In fact, since we don't really need f, we actually need f prime. Okay, because f prime is nothing but u upon u infinity. So f prime equal to 0 means u is 0, and f prime equals 1 means u is equal to u infinity. Okay, so this was obtained, and I'll show you the table here. So this table is taken from the book, textbook, F.M. White. And what we see here is that this numerically calculated series solution is obtained. So this is your y, or this is your eta, and this is your f prime. Okay, eta f prime. So you can see that for eta equal to 0, that is on the surface of the solid body, your f prime is 0. F prime is u by u infinity is 0. And as we move up, okay, so increasing eta values are basically for a fixed x value is moving up along the y direction. So the eta increases, and you can see that f prime values also increase. And if you are interested in finding the size of the boundary layer delta, remember delta was defined in such a way so that our u upon u infinity, it becomes 99%, so that is 0.99. So if I look at 0.99 for f prime, this happens here, okay, because just above that we had 0.98. So for an eta value of 5.0, so at eta equal to 5.0, we get u by u infinity is approximately 0.99, and this is also approximate because it's an infinite series solution. So we have numerically calculated that infinite series to as much precision as possible. Okay, so this is what we obtain. So that means that if we were able to calculate the value of delta, this is eta. So if you are able to calculate the value of y corresponding to this eta value, we've got the boundary layer thickness. Let's go back to our definition of eta. So eta was y upon delta tilde, okay, which was y square root nu u infinity upon x, and that's also given here. Have I made a mistake? I think I've been writing the wrong expression for eta. Yeah, so eta is this, which is y times u infinity upon nu x square root. So I might have made a mistake. Let me see if I can correct that. Yeah, it's only here. Okay, let's check again. Yeah, no. All right. So this is what our eta is, and this is equal to 5.0 is what we are looking for. Okay. So this implies that y equal to 5.0 times square root nu x upon u infinity is that y value at which we have the boundary layer thickness. Okay, so this basically is nothing but our delta. Okay, so delta is that particular y at which eta becomes equal to 5.0. Okay, so the boundary layer thickness is 5.0 times square root nu x upon u infinity. Okay, or you can also write that in terms of the Reynolds number. So I can divide both sides by x. So this becomes 5.0, and then on the right, on here we have square root nu upon u infinity x, which is nothing but 5.0 upon square root r e x. Okay, this is obtained by solving the equations, the Blasius equations. I mean, which were obtained from solving the actual boundary layer equations in the differential form. And what was the expression we obtained from the von Karman analysis? Okay, so von Karman delta by x from von Karman analysis was approximately 5.5 upon square root Rex. Okay, so this is close, and remember this was based on a parabolic assumption. Of u as a function of y. That was purely based on a guess for u, whereas this delta by x that we have just written, we will call it the delta by x, let's call it Blasius, is approximately 5.0 upon square root Rex. I use approximate because we still got this from this table, which is obtained from some finite approximation of the infinite series solution. Okay, so this is based on the actual solution of boundary layer equations. So that's very interesting because they are close. Okay, so the parabolic assumption that that von Karman had made wasn't very bad. In fact, that gives us a solution which is only 10% higher. So this is so let's write here. So delta by x from von Karman is only 10% higher than the correct solution. So correct solution is what we call this one. Right. Okay. So we can also solve for now remember the whole aim of this discussion in this chapter is to be able to calculate the wall shear stress, and hence from there we want to calculate the drag. Okay, so from this table or from the Blasius solution, f is a function of eta, we can calculate u and v both, because u and v were written in terms of f and f prime. Well, u was written as a function of f prime only, and v was both f and f prime dependent. So we have solved for f and we can solve for f prime as well. That is what actually was given in this table 7.1. Okay, so using this we can calculate for u and v, and from the solution for u we can calculate the wall shear stress, which is mu times del u by del y. Okay, so you can write del u by del y in terms of again f, the Blasius function f, and then you can substitute for that and get the tau wall, the wall shear stress. Okay, so if we put in all the values, then what we see is this comes out to be 0.332. So this is what the wall shear stress is if I use the Blasius solution. So this 0.332 comes from the Blasius solution, Okay, so this, I mean, you have to go from here to here using right. So this shows us, if I try to compare tau wall as a function of x, so what I see is that if my x increases, my tau wall decreases as x to the power of half. That is expected. I mean, we expect the tau wall to fall as x increases, and the reason is because in the boundary layer, we have discussed this, if you go from left to right, then the thickness of the boundary layer is increasing, so the velocity profile is getting more distance to go from 0 to u infinity. So that means the gradients here are less steeper as compared to what we have in the beginning. Okay, so the tau wall decreases as you go from left to right. Okay, so this tells us exactly how tau wall falls as a function of x, and also tells us that tau wall increases as u to the power of 1.5. Now, if you want, you can compare this to the laminar flow solutions. You can compare it to your pipe flow solutions. So, in a pipe flow, tau wall was constant because the velocity profile was parabolic in y, but it was always the same parabola as you go from left to right, okay, because it's a steady state solution. So, the solution stays parabolic, as we have shown in the solution to the equation in differential form, the Poiseuille flow solution. So that's interesting. So in a situation where the boundary layers are allowed to grow infinitely, then the wall shear stress decreases. So if you have a car that's moving, then the wall shear stress will be high in the beginning, then it goes down in the laminar region. And if I compare that to what's happening inside a pipe, because after some distance the boundary layers meet, so the wall shear stress becomes constant with x in a pipe, not in a external flow situation. Right. So we also when we typically talk about friction factor, which is tau wall upon half rho u infinity square. So it's just a way to non-dimensionalize the wall shear stress, and CF is like a Darcy friction factor in pipe. Okay, so this is 0.664 upon square root Rex. And if I now compare that to what I got from the von Karman analysis, then CF from von Karman was 0.73 by Rex. Okay. Right. So again, we see that from the von Karman analysis, our friction factor was slightly over predicted, but not too much, only 10% higher. Right. And the other thing we talked about earlier was the displacement thickness, delta star. So if we calculate delta star by x using the same ideas for the present solution from Licious, we get a 1.721 upon square root Rex, and we had obtained from the von Karman analysis, this was 1.83 upon square root Rex. Okay, so this was only 6% higher. So what we're saying is that von Karman analysis using a parabolic assumption for the velocity was actually quite decent. Right, and as the main aim is typically to find the drag. So if we're talking about a flat plate here, so we want, I mean, let's say that some general distance x. So if you want to calculate the drag that the shear stress is applying on this length x of the pipe in total, so you have to integrate the wall shear stress, which is a function of x, from 0 to x, and then multiply this by the area, so which is dx times the width b. Okay, so if we do that, I mean, I already mentioned the expression for tau wall here. So if you put the expression here and we integrate, so what we get is 0.664. Okay, so this is what we get, drag as a function of x. If you want to find the drag on the whole plate of length L, then you simply have to put x equal to L here. Let's do that. So in fact, if I want to find the drag coefficient, so we define the drag coefficient CD again as a non-dimensionalized drag on the whole plate. That's the total drag upon half rho u infinity squared. Okay, we'll talk more about this drag coefficient later in the later section of this discussion. I mean, actually tomorrow. So if I do this, if I calculate dl from here and divide by half rho u infinity square, what I'll get is 1.328 upon square root re L. So this Reynolds number is defined using the length L because it's drag for the whole plate of length L. Okay, so this is the integrated wall shear stress information for the whole plate. Okay, so the wall shear stress exists in the whole plate region. So this length is L. So if I was to find the wall shear stress and integrate for all thin sections, then I'll get the drag coefficient CD. And I can also calculate the wall shear stress here, okay, which after non-dimensionalization will give me CF, the friction factor, this one. So CF has information about the local shear stress at that particular x value, and because this is the function of x, and CD has the information about the integrated value of the wall shear stress resulting in the total drag on the plate. Okay, so if I compare this, what I see is this is 2 times the CF value at x equal to L. If I was to calculate the skin friction coefficient CF at this point, then that will be half of what we have for the total plate drag. Okay. And again, mathematically that makes sense, because what we are saying is that as we go from left to right, the wall shear stress is reducing. So if I was to plot tau wall as a function of x, then I'll see that at x equal to 0, if I look at this expression for tau wall, then x equal to 0, this is tending to infinity because the boundary layer is almost 0 in length. So the wall shear stress, I mean the velocity has to, x velocity has to go from 0 to u infinity in 0 distance. So that's a singularity. So this tau wall goes as 1 by x. Okay, so CD has an information about the total area under this curve, that's CD, and CF is the value here. Okay, well, of course, normalized. So CD is normalized and CF CD is normalized by dividing it by the total length L. So what we basically are saying is if you have a function that is decreasing, then if you take the integral and divide it, so you can approximate the decreasing function. If you were to, I mean, what this basically is saying is that you are approximating your CD as a uniform value. So this would have been something like this. So the area under this line would be the same as what is under x to the power half line. Okay, so this definitely is going to be higher than this value here of the function. So integral of a decreasing function will definitely result in an average value which is greater than the value of the function at x equal to L. This is x equal to L. Okay, this idea is quite intuitive anyways, but one has to remember, because you can calculate the CF value, then you don't need to solve for CD again. CD is simply twice of CF for flat plate laminar flow regime. Okay, now I mean you could also have used the von Karman drag relation. for calculating dx. Okay, because from von Karman drag relation, dx was equal to rho b times u infinity square times theta, the momentum thickness, which is the function of x, and theta was defined as integral from 0 to delta okay. So since u by u infinity is f prime from Blacher's solutions, you can substitute that here and you can calculate this theta x, and then hence dx can be calculated, right. So if you calculate for theta x, then theta x comes out to be 0.664 upon square root Rex from the Blacher's solution. Right, and that's basically what we got for CF. Okay, you can check that. Right. Well, I made a small mistake here. So this so this CD coefficient. Okay, this drag is a drag force. It's not a shear stress. So we have to multiply that by the area of the plate as well on which it is acting. So that is B, that is the plate width, times the length of the plate L. Okay. Right. So this is almost the end of the lecture. So we have shown today successfully that using the idea of approximating the different terms inside the x momentum equation, which is called the order of magnitude analysis, we were very nicely able to simplify the Navier-Stokes equations into the boundary layer equations, and then I showed you how to solve them for a laminar flat plate situation. So this has finally given us the expressions for both the local. So this CF is called the local drag coefficient, okay, the friction coefficient or the local drag coefficient, and that's called the sometimes the global drag or the total drag coefficient. Okay, so if you hear the word local drag coefficient, then that is nothing but the value CF, the skin friction coefficient. Okay, that's pretty much it. Now, and remember, for this kind of a situation, all you need is CF. Well, actually, you need a CD. You want to find the total force. So you simply take CD and then you multiply that by half rho u infinity squared times the area of the plate, which is B times L. So if CD is obtained, then from there we can calculate the total force, the shear force acting on the plate, and that is what the aim of this whole discussion is anyways. And CD for the flat plate situation is theoretically calculated as twice of CF, which is this. Okay. So we have a knowledge of the CD as a function of Reynolds number. Right. Now there may be situations where this CD cannot be calculated using these theoretical ideas like we did in this particular situation. Maybe because the surface is having a curvature, so we can't solve the equations analytically for those situations, or the flow is turbulent. So for that kind of a situation, we have to do experiments, and when we do experiments, we collect this empirical data. We tend to tabulate, or we tend to plot the value of CD as a function of Reynolds number, because ultimately that is what we need. If you see from this expression, you know CD as a function of Reynolds number. So here it was obtained from theoretical ideas. We could also obtain it from experimental correlations. So you plot some, you make experimental measurements, and then you plot it on a graph or a table, and then you can come up with some nice correlations as curve fitting formulas, so which can be used for calculations. But again, empirical ideas are only limited to special situations. It's not general because it's obtained from experimentation on some particular system. Right, so let's look at the u by u, which is your x velocity, versus y by delta, which is the ratio of y to the boundary layer thickness. So here we see the solid line here is for the Blasius profile. Okay, so we see that at y equal to 0, at this point your u is 0, and at y equal to delta, which is y by delta equal to 1, so this one, you get a u by capital U as almost equal to 1, that is actually 0.99 value here. So it goes like this, and this dashed line that is shown just above it is from the parabolic approximation of one carbon, and we can see that they are very close. That tells us that one carbon's assumption of a parabolic profile inside the laminar boundary layer was quite accurate. Right, but this was laminar. We have some data available for turbulent flows, and what we see is that the value of x velocity increases very sharply in this region where y is close to the solid surface, and then it becomes flat. Okay, so this is drawn with y on the x axis, but if you were to draw with y on the y axis, and this is the x direction, so the x velocity will be plotted here, and this was y by delta. Then for turbulent, what you see is it's a very sharp increase, and then it becomes something like this. Okay, so this is the same as what we have here. All right, so this is turbulent. So in the lecture tomorrow, we'll talk about we'll analyze the turbulent boundary layer profiles, and from there we'll want to extract the information about the wall shear stress, because remember the aim is to calculate the wall shear stress, and from there we want to calculate the drag as a function of x. So we'll stop here, and I'll see you in the next lecture tomorrow. Thank you.